forward. And what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about where we are now. We've just published our May data for performance of the industry in terms of placements of permanent staff and temporary staff. Talk a little bit about that, but actually think a bit more about the long talent cycle rather than the short talent cycle, because I think there's a lot of focus right now on what it means to return to work after the pandemic, the decisions people are making now about hybrid working, about where they want to live, the commute they want, and the decisions that companies are making about stepping up hiring. But I think there's also some long-term things that need to be on the C-suite agenda around talent, which the pandemic has amplified and accelerated rather than created. So let's start with what we're seeing. This morning, we published our May billings data for recruiters across the UK. We have never recorded a higher rate of growth in permanent placements. Neither have we seen such a sustained and strong trend for temporary placements for a number of years. So that robustness in hiring activity is definitely out there. We've had a sharp contraction in candidate availability. So lots and lots of businesses struggling to find the people they need, as your surveys just shown, Richard. And of course, we all know what that means. There's some inflationary pressure coming into the market. Maybe some of those pay feedback points in the survey speak to the fact that we've seen quite a substantial uptick in the last couple of months on starting salaries. So as most recruitment businesses are reporting that starting salaries have started to increase quite significantly. That's what you'd expect to happen, a bit of inflationary pressure through the labour market. Now, one of the challenges here, and I think the most guilty party on all of this is usually government. They say, well, here's a stock of unemployed people or people who are working below their qualification grade. And over here are some jobs. We just take those people and put them there. And the one thing we all know is that the labour market is not a zero-sum game. People need to walk a path to jobs. And that's why we're seeing significant shortages appearing in sectors with high demand and relatively high barriers to entry. Everything from at one end, drivers in logistics, where we are maybe 30,000 short already, significant potential crisis over the summer there, through to all of the skills that we know professional services firms are particularly focused on at the moment, the right technology skills in cyber and other areas, but also things like digital marketing skills, which are in very high demand. So working through how we can get more people into those roles is a short-term operational challenge, of course it is. But there's a longer-term challenge at work here as well, which is I think the pandemic has highlighted two big trends, which are global trends. You saw earlier this week, China's moved to a 3-child policy from a 2-child policy, as an example of that, but they are sharp in the UK as well. And those two, the first trend is that the domestic labour force is actually quite tight, and it's going to get progressively a little more tight. And the pandemic's maybe created a peak in that, where people who were maybe going to retire or leave the labour force at some point over the next 5 years have thought, actually, I've had 6 months at home, or I've been on furlough, and now I think I'll step back now. There were 50% more children born in 1964 than in 1977. And it's not a fact, that's why the challenge globally is that baby boom generation, who have been a really big supply of talent into the industry, into all industries, are starting to leave the field. Simultaneously, of course, in the UK, we've got the effect of Brexit, which particularly hospitality, it has been hard hit by. We are moving to a world where maybe for the first time we need to think about labour as a truly scarce commodity. And when we think about some of the debates we were having before the pandemic about the impact, for instance, automation and AI and other forms of technology on what we do as businesses, I think we talked about the risk to jobs. I actually think the challenge now might be, do we have the people to run the technology we need to deploy? So long-term talent thinking in business is going to become extremely important as the UK labour force is more constricted than it's been for probably 30 or 40 years, basically since that peak of the baby boom generation came into the labour force. And that's why this cyclical peak in hiring that we're seeing, and there is a dam that's broken, things that's starting to happen, and this kind of significant peak that we've got now will dissipate over the next few months. But the idea that the UK labour market will remain tight for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I think is something we're going to have to get used to. Now, for us, for Richard and I and others on the Professional Service and Business Services Council, we're going to be making the argument for the right skills programs of pragmatic immigration and all of those things. But actually for businesses, that talent and workforce planning piece is going to become more important than ever. And it's exactly what the survey was showing. It's what's your offer? And not just the survey. It's what is it like to work for you? Do you have the right balance hybrid? Because people want to see each other and want to have human interaction, but they also want flexibility. Different people want different things. How do you manage that out? There's a whole slew of employee relations issues that are going to be really important to staff retention, because retention is the first way to stop yourself having to recruit. It's slightly against my brief to say that, but I like to be open and honest. And then when you do recruit, how do you bring people in? And I think there, just a final point for me, Richard, we're going to have to look in different places. So lots of people in the industry have done great work reaching into new talent pools. This whole idea of hire, train, deploy is going to become ever more important, because the sadness of where we are, going back to what I said about a zero-sum game, is across the whole of the UK, there's about 30% of young people who are not in education, training or employment in almost every area. So while the labour market as a whole is tight, there is a pool of people we can reach. We just need to find ways to reach them. So big challenges, but my encouragement to everyone on the call is workforce planning as a strategic issue. Thinking about talent attraction and retention as a C-suite goal is going to become non-optional because of the nature of the British labour market over the next 20 years. Over to you.